Morning, everyone. This is Tim on North and South Podcast. I'm a bit under the weather today, but you know, you've got to do what you've got to do. And I've been meaning to speak to the gentleman we're going to talk to today for a while. This is Gary. Gary, how are you?
I'm fine, Tim. Yeah, thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Now, Gary goes to Hope Street, and I've seen him at Hope Street meetings, which is the wellbeing charity that we both attend in Ormskirk. He's got a very interesting story, and he's a top bloke. So, Gary, how long have you been going to Hope Street?
I think it's 2019 now, Tim. In fact, it is, yeah. So that's when it just started up. And basically, I was at a hospital appointment, asked the hospital on that particular day. I remember saying, I just want groups in the community because all they wanted to do was change my meds. And in the reception at the hospital, there was a flyer for Hope Street. And that was a great way to find it because there was no groups in the community, even back
Yeah.
then, even in 2019. So I found it on a flyer and then started, like I said, the hospital, which was a great way to advertise it, and started going in. It was May 2019, yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
first went in December 2019. I remember seeing you at the first meeting, the Christmas one. But one of
Mhm.
the reasons Hope Street was set up is that Sheila and Dom, who were the ones who started it, and Sheila and Dom have both been on the podcast. Sheila's hoping to come on again. They said that there was a lack of provision in the local area. Now we all know about the pressures on the NHS with austerity and the
Yeah.
difficulties COVID and post COVID and the cost of living crisis and the strikes, etc. There's been a big impact on the front line. And there's something that's called social prescription, which doctors are increasingly becoming aware of, which is recommending groups and things to do and new activities rather than just the traditional take this medication and we'll put you on a what can be a very long waiting list for free counselling, even though people can take private counselling. But it's a very difficult thing to navigate, and sometimes just going to a group where you speak to people who have been through similar things to yourself is very important. And some of the discussions I've had with you about medication have been very, very interesting because you don't hear that from the GP, and sharing those stories with other people, I think that's really important. So what's your story then, Gary? What's your kind of background in relation to well-being and mental health? Because I've had depression, anxiety since I was 29. I'm 46 now. I've had counselling several times. I've been on antidepressant medication in that time, and I've had a few ups and downs, certainly. So, what's been your background?
Well, all my adult life, really, I've suffered with, depression and anxiety. So since I started on medication when I was about 20, I think I was 23.
Yeah.
So long, long time on medication, and yeah, it's something which I've had all my adult life. Even looking back now, most of all my life really, certainly as long as I can remember. But started on medication in about 2023, and I've had a lot of ups and downs on medication to say the least. But I had a good job, I had a good career, but I was very successful. But I became ill and lost my job through my mental health, which workplace mental health is a big thing that I'm very passionate about because the company I was with at the time, they didn't understand it and I hadn't opened up about my mental health. And like I said, it was a great position, job I loved, but they thought the best way to do it was to provide a severance pay. They thought they were doing the best thing at that particular time, which and I took the severance pay and lost my career really. So I think what I'm saying there is workplace mental health, is much better understood these days. I don't blame the company at all. You just thought we were doing the best thing, and I thought I was, but we would have gone through counselling and things like that, and would have stayed in the position probably, and that would have been better for the company and for myself in the long term. But that's just the way it worked out. So yeah, so that was my, in my career, and then really struggled to work since. If I'm being honest, struggling to hold down a job because of my mental health. So workplace mental health is a big passion of mine, and it is being more understood these days. So that's a big thing. But going back to the medication, so I was on it at 23, and I I've only had a couple of instances where I feel like it's lifted me. That was at the start, and then I believe then I became just more reliant on the medication, but it wasn't. It just wasn't doing what I thought it would do, and I had a hospital admission in 2002. I had one in 2011, and then I've had two recently this year. So it's been on and off, and that's been in conjunction really with coming on and off medication.
Yeah.
So it's going on to like I say onto the hospital stage. Basically, I had suicidal depression, and in 2011 I made an attempt, and then in 2012, and then as recently as 2022. And all of them have been tied in with coming on and off medication. As you know, I managed to come off in 2021, and I think you and I chatted about it. And I come off it in a very much a phased withdrawal. But with the help of the GP, it's not something I just stopped. I didn't take it lightly, and came off it in a very phased withdrawal in 2021. But again, got these suicidal, depressive thoughts, and managed to stay off for about 18 months. Lost over 2 stone because that's what medication does for you. I lost a lot of weight and I felt good. But then I started relapse again in September 2022. Went back on it, fluoxetine it was, which is Prozac. And unfortunately, again, got these suicidal thoughts. So it was very, very real, very, very scary. And I acted on those suicidal thoughts in November 2022. But luckily, got found in time and got admitted to hospital. I think the thing, my experience is, every person is different in relation to different medications. I'm back on 3 types of antidepressant now, and the nausea is a particular thing I get from it. I'm basically feeling sedated, but it's helping my mental health. My mental health has improved over the last few weeks. I came out of hospital 3 weeks ago after another 15, 16 days in, because I felt I was relapsing because of my history. That's, I got admitted, and the NHS have been great, but really it's all about medication, and it's just getting me more stable again on my medication, and then discharging me really, and I'm now under the CMHT, to be monitored, but I'm feeling better because of the medication. But it's the nausea and the lack of energy and so on, which is the worst for me. And that's, people experience it in different ways. The side effects for one person on one particular medication are different to another. We're all different. I've tolerated different medications. I know someone else who hasn't. All through peer support in the Hope Street group, really. That's where I've had the best education. As you were saying before, the doctors, the psychiatrists, they're not on these medications, and they really haven't got. They've got the experience, but haven't got the lived experience. When I first started going to Hope Street, it was just such an eye opener, because our peers could support each other and describe the different side effects, and that's what it was. What was working for one person might not necessarily work for another, and that's really a big thing. So I'm just at the moment relatively stable on what I'm on, but that doesn't mean to say that somebody else on the same medication would feel the same way.
That's resonates a lot with me, and as you just said, like, it's all quite subjective in the way we respond to things, and we've all got our own personal experiences. But there's a lot of themes here which people who suffered with the mental health need to know, but also people who might consider themselves someone who hasn't suffered with mental health need to know, because you might know people, etc. And I think one of them is the workplace mental health, because that theoretically, particularly with the Equalities Act, the 2010, you should be able to go to your employer and go, listen, I'm struggling. Can we make some reasonable adjustments to help me to do well? Now, it's different if you're a casual worker and you haven't got rights and responsibility. Sorry, you haven't got rights in the workplace, etc. But technically speaking, your workplace is expected to make reasonable adjustments. Now, the only issue with that is a lot of people feel guilty and say, "Oh, I can't go making all these requests because that's just not how the world works." When in fact, there's so many people who are affected by these issues now. It's like a huge minority of people in any workplace will be affected by these things at any time. And I think that one of the important things is, trade unions who educate people, but also people educating themselves, and workplaces being open and honest and saying, we're a mental health positive workplace and we want to discuss these things and we want to make people's lives better. Because this old way of one size fits all, and if you don't like it, best thing is to go. That's not what people are about, and it's certainly not right or fair or just. And as you said, the way we used to see people with disabilities and people who have mental health issues in the past, we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go, particularly with austerity, cost of living crisis. And to be disabled today or to have mental health issues where you can't enter the workplace, that's not an attractive lifestyle for people. This is one that people go into because that's what they need to do. And we very much need to change that agenda. When did you finish at work then? What year was that when you stopped that regular job?
It was November 2008, so it was a while ago, long time ago. And like I say, it was very much a case of I was in a very good position and enjoyed my job. But when I became ill, it was that not feeling of being able to open up, and that was on my part. But also, like I say, the company didn't understand it by their own admission at that particular time. They were a smaller company, to be fair, and they were a very good company, but more of a family company, so there was no HR, more procedure to go to. It was just really with the myself and the MD, and him thinking he was doing the right thing. So, and it's the biggest, as you probably know, it's the biggest cause of workplace absence is mental health. It's costs millions per year. I think it's the number one cause of being absent in the workplace. So, and that says so much, doesn't it? Really, if it was broken leg or something that was causing the number one absence from work, I'm sure it would be looked at differently. But it's come a long way, like you were saying. It's got better, but there's still a long way to go. There's departments now. I know a lady who works in HR, and she is Mental Health First Aid England, which is a workplace training. So somebody in HR like this lady would then, be the go-to person for anybody who was struggling without any worries about them opening up. So I'm a big passion for that. I've got, like I say, it's a big passion of mine, and that's one of the courses, and it has got better, where people feel better to open up. But it's hard for employees as well because they've got a business, to run. So it's a two-way thing. It's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
Because having somebody off is a massive loss for them, of course. So I think employers are embracing it a lot more. Certainly in with my experience, in about the last 4 or 5 years, I think it's been really embraced a lot more. For very much, for the good of everyone.
Absolutely, and I've done that first aid course myself, mental health first aid course, and some workplaces are really good, and others, a little bit less so. And sometimes, as you said, it can be due to the size of the institution, the nature of the business, the nature of the employment rights of the people who live there, etc. But ultimately, it's a win-win when you are positive, because people, A, want to go there, 2, want to develop skills, and 3, you have less days off, and people perform better. So I think it's a win for everyone, very much so. But I'm very passionate about that as well, just getting these things in the open, saying, I struggle with this for these reasons, what can we do? And I think that's great, and I think that we should embrace that a lot more. I always felt I had anxiety when I was young. Do you feel it was something that kind of was part of what makes you who you are, and it just kind of developed through life, or was it because of life events, or how would you explain your kind
Very
of
much
life
so.
story?
I think as a child, I was a very anxious child, and
Mm.
I've had anxiety then. I don't think it was depression back then, but certainly as an anxiety thing, I did have a lot of anxiety from, I'd say, from memory, from maybe from about the age of 8 onwards, really. So it's been very much a lifelong condition, and it was just wasn't understood, back then, really, and I didn't understand it. I was, as I got into my teens, the anxiety was still there. And then it was more, I was struggling to work, really. I always struggled in the workplace by the same token, but also managed to be very successful in the workplace. So, yeah, it has been a lifelong condition with the depression, I would say, from about the age, like I said before, about 23, you know, and very much panic. I've suffered from panic attacks quite a lot in the last 10, 15 years, and just tried really to. It can't just be medication alone. It has to come from within, as we know. And I have tried to be as active as I can in terms of physical exercise. I watch my diet very carefully. I don't drink alcohol at all. That's not good for my mental health. So it's not just about medication alone. It's about those lifestyle choices really, which I've made, which help. It's just something I have to manage, and probably always have to manage it for the rest of my life, really. And that's it demands mental health rather than physical health. I'm relatively okay physically. It's just this nausea and this fatigue, that the medication I'm on gives me, but I have to offset that in terms of keeping myself well.
Yeah, I think that the key thing with these things is that you need to take ownership of it and say, right, I'm going to do my side of things. And I think that when you do that, and you're always thinking, right, what's next? What's my next little target? What's my next little thing? When you've got that and you're looking to better yourself, I think that's a big part of managing the condition, because it's like you feel like you're never giving up. You're always saying, I want to get better. And one example I'd give is going gluten free, the improvements in my mental health just by going gluten free. It was like, might not work for
Yeah,
everyone, but I found that quite remarkable when I did that about two and a bit years ago. Now that was quite a lift. Now the whole medication thing, it's very much a bit of a stigma still. Like if you're on antidepressants, some people take anti-anxiety tablets, some people take antipsychotics for more serious disorders, and then you have things which I think are hybrids between the two, etc. But I've been on two types of antidepressants. I'm relatively stable on one of them now, although I've just lowered my dose, and it's been very, very challenging. Now, people who have had experience of this know that when you change your medication, it can take 17 weeks before the changes impact. And I remember when I first went on my antidepressants in 2007, that was the longest 17 weeks of my life. When it kicked in at the end of June, there was a 30-40% improvement in my mental state. And that was a very, very long time. And even though I wasn't kind of a crisis point, I effectively wasn't working. I was really struggling with like basic stuff. And waiting for things to kick in can be very difficult. But when you do slight changes as well, it often takes months for the effects to kick in, for the side effects to go, and for the reliability you have to them to kind of pass through your system. Because one of the things which is increasingly coming out in the literature, not just through lived experience, is the idea of these medications. Very slight adjustments are sometimes needed rather than big adjustments, which many of the GPs still advocate, particularly in the UK, in my experience. But there are often addictive and reliability. There's addictions and reliabilities to the actual meds and unbelievable withdrawal symptoms, which you've got to navigate. And while all this is going on, you're living in this big soup of your day-to-day life, or you're just having a bad day anyway. External situations, picking up other illnesses, so you might feel a bit run down because you've got the flu, and then you've got all of this big mix, and it's very, very hard to know what is what. And when I've adjusted my medications or changed them, I have had very, very, very difficult spells of months on end. Is that a similar experience to what you've had?
oh, very much so, very much so. Yeah, Yeah, very much so, particularly coming on and off, trying to come off. When I came off them in 2021, this amount of suicidal thoughts really rocketed. Luckily, I got support in the community and did that. Got support in the community, but also went back to I was back under the crisis team. All I wanted to do was change my medication, and that's not what I wanted. So I managed to get through that period with the help in the community, like so Hope Street, and stay off it for a short time, for about 18 months, as I mentioned before. And it was going back on it. Antidepressants, certain ones are known, to increase suicidal thoughts, and that's very much been the case with me, and is the case with a lot of other people. I know it can go on once you start on the antidepressants. You can feel so much worse before you're so much better, and that's the thing with them. It can be very frustrating and very frightening, very frightening.
Yeah, and when you're down there, mate, it's so powerful, isn't it? That feeling of just doom and gloom.
Mm.
And I'd struggled to reduce my medications in the past, and I'd had GPs go, "Oh yeah, go from 30 down to 20." And I was just talking to someone recently, and they said, "Go on to I forget, there's a few online chat apps and stuff." In the end, I just went onto Facebook and put in antidepressants, and there was 4 groups. I joined them all and said, "I'm looking to reduce antidepressants. Really struggled in the past. I think I've got withdrawal symptoms," which some people don't get. Some people can go on antidepressants and then half the dose and they come off fairly quickly and it's okay. But with me, I've really struggled.
Yeah,
And
I know it's,
these people said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, my doctor said go from 30 to 20." And he went, "No, no." I said, "Well, what would you say then, 30 to 25? And he went, "No." They said, "Reduce it by 10% for a month, then 10% the month after, then 10% the month after, because your nervous system needs to readjust." Now, it's okay us here now talking about it and going, "Oh, yeah, your nervous system needs to readjust," and it's not very nice. When you're going through weeks and weeks of low mood, that is very, very challenging. And I would say it's probably took 2.5 months. Well, yeah, just over 2 months for that dosage change to settle down. So I went down 10% for a month and then went down another 10%. And people said, "You might need to stay on that now for longer if you're still struggling." Again, this was all through these chat rooms and these groups. Now, if you haven't got that facility, the internet or Hope Street, where we've had lots of conversations, me and you and others, about how we modify our medications, you're going to the GP who's saying, "I'll go from 30 to 20. Then you feel like terrible and you go back up to 30 and you're back at square one again, reliant on the medications to get through the day and suffering the side effects of the medications themselves, which is another story. But all I can say is the lived experience of people who've been on it, which isn't to say that you go online and, you know, Philippa from Blackburn says, "Oh, just do this, it'll be fine." You need to look at a few different opinions and weigh things up and look at the advice online. Don't be just doing something rash and silly. But I found that this very gradual reduction is very helpful. Then I can say after 3 months, right, I know that this is that. Or, "Oh, I've settled down now. That's interesting. How do I feel? Do I feel better now than I did at first? Is it worth going back up? Or now that I'm through the withdrawal period, can I stay on this dose?" So I've gone from 30 to 25, which might not sound like a lot, but I'm feeling okay on 25. Do you know what I mean? So now I know that I can do that. Whereas in the past, I dropped too quickly and I was back up onto the 30. And I think that's another big aspect. But as you said, David Foster Wallace, world famous author, died, committed suicide, unfortunately, 2008, I think it was, because he changed his medication and he just couldn't deal with it. And, there are so many people who must be doing that, but we don't always hear about the exact circumstances of why people might be doing that. And then a few months later, someone like yourself be like, "Oh yeah, I'm glad that didn't work." Do you know what I mean? And you're
Yeah,
through it. But that's what's
yeah,
so challenging, isn't it?
yeah. It is. It is very much so. We've talked about it a lot, and it's great to have that peer support, which we have at the likes of Hope Street, because, like I said before, that's been before 2019. Honestly, it was only with the mental health professionals, which really do have their place, but the peer support other people being on similar medications is fantastic. And that's why things are getting a lot better in the community and need to do so, and to people to be more honest and opening up and feeling comfortable doing that.
Absolutely, and I can't reiterate that enough. Again, it depends on your circumstances. Some people can make those adjustments really quickly, go on, come off. And the fact that you did 18 months, that's effectively 15 months without, well, 14 months where you're basically completely unprotected by the serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And, you did well there for a long time. And then when it went bad again, you go back on them and it makes things worse. And these are the constant, difficult decisions people have got to make. It's so hard, isn't it, to know what to do for what's best.
It is.
So where are you up to now then? You're seeing you said, was it the the community mental health team?
The community mental health team, yeah. Bearing in mind about 2 hospital admissions, one in November last year, 2022, until February this year, came also under the CMHT, and who basically look at my medication. If I wanted to tweak it or alter it slightly, I'm under their services to be able to do that. It's not just something which I'm doing on my own. I'm there today, as we mentioned again. So, they've been good. I had a relapse around about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and straight away, because of my history, I was back in as an inpatient for about 18 days, I think, and again got stabilised, got back on the medication levels that I was previously, and got discharged, but very much under their service,
Yeah.
So that's it.
Do you know the CMHT? Are they literally on the other end of the phone if you need to speak to someone, or
Yeah,
can you?
very much so.
And you can turn up somewhere and go, "I'm not too good." Yeah. Because effectively, people.
Well, yeah, very much so. The CMHT have their own line that I've got available, and others, of course, in similar situation, have got available to them. And engage in the community a lot with the group, with Hope Street, and it's not just about medication; it's about my life choices as well. You're going alongside it, and like I said, a big thing for me is physical exercise, diet, and being open and honest with family and close friends. That's and at the moment I do, I have picked up again. I'm in a relatively good place mentally. Just the nausea, unfortunately, which I have to try and manage at this moment in time. Yeah, that's where I'm up to. Under the CMHT services, engaging in the community with the likes of Hope Street, and the other things which you mentioned, like diets and exercise and so on, to go alongside it.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you got any advice to others? I think that's it, isn't it? It's you may need medication. Know who to go to in terms of a crisis. You're under the right team. Use social prescribing, get out and do things that you enjoy with others to enhance that, and then to take responsibility in your private life for things like diet. I mean, I haven't drank alcohol for 15 years, and it's a depressant. And when my mental health wasn't good, to be honest with you, giving up alcohol was the easiest decision I ever made. And when someone says to you, "Is how you are now, is what you're like now, and is the medication we're going to put you on is your situation." And when the doctor said that to me, you shouldn't really drink when you're on these, I said, that's it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was the easiest decision I've ever made. We're still tough hitting the alcohol on the head completely. There's a little period that you have to get through, but probably the best thing I've done. And then the other things like gluten-free, and I do yoga. If you get a bit older, things like yoga, walking, bit of cycling, having an exercise bike in the winter, it just lifts your mood immeasurably, particularly early in the day. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thanks very much, Gary. I think we'll leave it there. I know you've got an appointment coming up soon, and it's a Saturday, and you've given up your valuable time.
No, that's been great, Tim. No problem at all, mate. Yeah.
Brilliant. But you speak well, and your story is very important. A lifetime of difficulty at times, but a positive message, knowing what support to get, and also the reality of what medication and fine tuning and changing things, what that's like for people on the front line. It's very hard. And also, as you say, lived experience, sharing that with others, using community groups, using the teams and taking responsibility. So Gary, thank you very much. Look after yourself and speak to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Thank you.